All right, let's do this. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining. It's time for another exciting lightning talk. I'm Parag Katkar, your host for tonight. I'm the head of consulting practices at InRhythm, and we have a lot of exciting content lined up for you in the upcoming weeks. Our lightning talks are hosted every Thursday at 5:15 p.m. Eastern Time. And each week, one of our practice area consultants speaks on the latest technology trends in the industry that will help you keep learning and growing in your career. And this week, Naveen Chandran, who is a software development engineer in test at InRhythm, is going to show how to use Postman in API testing. I'm super excited for this talk. So without further ado, let's get it started, Naveen.
Hello. Hi, thanks, Parag, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. This is Naveen. I've been with InRhythm for 4 years now. I have worked as an estate in various client projects. Uh, so this today, what I'm going to share to you about is using Postman, which is an application which most of the developers are aware, where we run the manual API testing. How do we use this to run an end-to-end API test? Also run it in CI/CD pipeline. Uh, let's get it started. I'll quickly go through the overview. So the topics we're going to cover today are about the collections, how to set up a collection, how to set up a collection of requests within Postman so they can run sequentially. And then what are the different types of variables that are in Postman and how can we utilize them to run different types of API tests? What is a precondition and test? We'll get more into that as we go through the slides. And talk also about some advanced features in Postman like monitors, mocks, and how to include this Postman collections in CI/CD as every project currently requires you to run your testings in CI/CD pipelines. Um, so let's go into the first topic of collection. So, what is a collection? I'm going to quickly switch to my Postman window here. So collection is something where you put a bunch of requests together. So if you go to Postman and you can create your collection simply by clicking this, you'll get a new collection. You can name your collection as something like test, and within your collection you can add always add a new request, and you can add your URLs here, something like so. Just so just for the example, so this is what is called as a collection. This test here, this folder is called as a collection. So as we go through a bunch of requests, as we would be stitching them together under one collection. So in order to use to structure any kind of test together, first of all, we need to put a bunch of requests together and the order in which they would be executed so that our tests make sense to us. So that's where the collection comes in. And, collections are the first, primary structure of Postman, how things can be collected together and they can be shared. So here you can see I have put in, this is called as a collection. Test script, this is a collection I have put together, and under this there are subfolders, and these are the requests that are under these folders. Now, as it comes to testing and any other project requirements, we need to be able to share our testing with share our collections with people, and work on any kind of collection collaboratively. So how do we share a collection that we have developed locally here? So quickly showing you, so there is something called as the workspace in Postman. So what a workspace does is, each organization, probably if they have a premium subscription with Postman, you would have an organization workspace. Here I have a bunch of workspaces into the workspace, and team workspace, and these are a bunch of workspace I have. In case, so every time you save, you make changes. If I just make changes and do continue command S, it's automatically saved to my workspace. But how do we work on something that is present? I'm going to show you how to pull something from my workspace into another workspace. So consider this So, think about this InRhythm workspace, which I am in on current right now, as your primary organization workspace. And if you want to pull something from this to your local workspace, all you have to do is go to the collection that you want to pull, click on the right three buttons, click on create a fork, and you can name this as anything you want. And I'm just gonna move it to my personal workspace, fork collection. So one thing with this is now your collection is forked from the main branch, and any changes you make will not be automatically pushed to the main workspace. So this keeps working locally and making changes to the workspace more convenient. In case you want to change and do your push, make changes and push your code, you can just I'm just gonna make a quick change of commenting this out, and we can push it using create pull request. You would be able to create a pull request, and you should be able to uh, push these changes to the organizational workspace or your main workspace where you are collaboratively working. Also within the workspace, things you can utilize to be more developer friendly, or each workspace has documentation space. So you can use this within the workspace. There is this, if you click on this icon, you have this documentation space where you can make write documentation on whatever you want to take notes on. Also within each request, you can always consider this request. You can always make an comment here and push this. And once you're pushing these things, when you're working locally and you're pushing it to your organizational workspace, these things would be reflected to everyone in the team, and they would be able to come on the same page. So this is like similar to git pull and push, but in a the Postman's way of doing things. And yeah, consider this as a collection, and let's talk about running things together. So if you want to run a couple of things together, like I have this collection and I have four requests under this collection. So if I want to run all these chain requests together, uh, you can see under this collection there is a button called run. We just click this button, and you would get the bunch of calls listed together, and you can click run developer use. Also, there are advanced settings of you can save the responses, keep variable values, and we'll talk about more about variables in the next session. And you can just click run developer, run, and so you can see that it had ran a bunch of calls together in the order which we have given. So that's about collection runner. Yeah, and let's move on to the next slide of variable types. So Postman, if you look at this request, right, there are parameters here which I have used rather than hard coding it. So always when we are stitching a bunch of calls together, we might want to effectively use constants like how we use in programming, so that we don't want to keep rewriting the same thing again and again. So in that case, there are three types of variables within Postman. So one is called as the environment variables. That those you can access through here, through this type of environment. Here I have two environments set up, QA and prod. And within QA, you can see that there are URLs, PM URL. This is the environment variable, and you can see how I'm accessing it here. You just have to use the environment variable within braces and mention its name. You would automatically fetch it from the environment. The scope of the environment variable is you can, the one convenience of the environment variables, you can have everything, the body, your prerequisite request script and tests the same, and you can switch your environments. So consider always whenever we are deploying an API and we are trying to test an API, we would do it in a lower environment as well as in the higher environment. So in that case, you don't want to keep copy pasting your URLs to the same. Uh, pasting the URLs here. So in that case, you can just switch the environments, and your URLs will be picked up from the environment which you are pointing to. So if I'm pointing prod, it is pulling it from the prod environment. If I'm pointing to QA, it's pulling it from the QA environment. So this is called as the environment variables within Postman. There is another variable called as the collection variables. So these collection variables can be accessed. So I click on the collections and collection name, and you will see the collection variables here. So the scope of the collection variables is it's only visible within the collection. Anything outside the collection will not have access uh, to these variables. Where you can save and use collection variables, how to save, set and get variables, I'm going to talk in the next slide, but you can access collection variables. You can use collection variables probably to set values within a call, and the next subsequent call which needs that value can access it from the collection variables. So if you see here, for an example, I'm taking this request called as moment, uh, and sorry, this is request called chai, and I am just setting an from from the test, I'm setting this value. I'm get from the response of this object. I'm setting the value to pm.collection variables.set. And first of all, anytime before you want to access the response of a call in Postman, you just have to type pm.response, and you will have access to the response object within from that call. So you just have to, I'm setting the collection variables here, pm.collection variables.set. I'm just setting the film one particular object from this response to the collection variables. Uh, I'm gonna quickly. I'm trying to send this request. My send button is. Okay, so once I hit send, this would automatically be saved in my request. You can see already I've sent this request, so my field title is already saved. So when I come back to this request, which is a sequential request, it is using this film title that is pulling it from the environment variable which we saved from the last call. So when we're running API tests, we would obviously want some values from the previous request to be sent into the next request, like your access tokens or authorization tokens or some certain field values, IDs that are generated by the previous call. In these cases, you can set these variables to the collection variables, and then pull it in the next request. So you don't even have to worry about these things manually copy pasting it each time. Our intention is to make this collections in a way automated in such a way that so that it keeps continuously running in our pipelines. So that's where I'm heading towards. The other type of variable, so we have seen two variables so far, that is the environment variables as well as the collection variables. The third type of variable we have is called as uh, the global variables. So these are the global variables. We can access it from the environment global. Uh, the thing with global variables, it is accessible even between workspaces. So even if we switch workspaces, the global variables that are saved here will still remain the same. So you can save data that you think you can save data to globals which you think you're going to be using between workspaces, so as to usually pull and work between workspaces. That's about the variable types. We're going to see what's the next thing in order. So since we have seen a couple of things now, please feel free to stop me and ask any questions in the meantime, if you have any questions around that. So we have seen chaining calls together, and we have also seen how to use environment variables to access environment variables and different types of variables that can be used within this call. So the next thing we need to do is, even before making an API call, we always need to make sure that there is some amount of request. We might want to formulate the request in such a way that uh, the request is valid, and this request might require dynamic data that might be need to be populated, or different types of values that need to be populated. So in that case, you can use something called as that's where the prerequisite tab comes in handy. So prerequisite script is something that happens every time before each API is run. So in modern language, you can consider this as a before test exactly. So this is called exactly before each API is run. So here you can see I am one cool thing with Postman is that you can use JS libraries within the prerequisite script as well as the test. So you can here I'm using something called as a post JS library called Moment. You can use this Moment library, and this is how you uh, you know uh, create the dependency within Postman for a library. You just note down require comma moment, and then it would it would fetch that JS library for you. And here I'm just using this moment to set a few variables, different types of variables. So I'm setting a collection variables, environment variables, as well as a global variable just for the demo here. And we can do a bunch of things. So I have a, why are we setting variables to the session? Because we don't want the data to be lost after we have included in the script. So prerequisite script, we are creating this dynamic data that we are going to feed into our request, and we are saving it to the collection variables. And then we are in the body, you can see that we are just pointing our body to reference those variables we have set in different environments. This anywhere, this can be in global or collections, uh, or within the environment. Anywhere we can set these variables, and you can call it within the body. So once you have called it, and you can hit send, so it would run the prerequisite script and then assign those values to the body, and then the API is test is run. After this is run, so that's the most important step of a prerequisite script. So we might, there are many types of things we could do with the prerequisite script. You can even add some logic before JavaScript logics before you're writing some tests and stuff like that. And when it comes to tests, uh, so the next step is after test, right? So you have something before a test is run, but the most probable thing you want to do with the testing is once an endpoint is hit, you want to validate that whether it has got the right status, right response object, and things like that. That's when our tests tab come into play. So here too, like the prerequisite script, you can always add a JSON JavaScript library to 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 enhance your validations. But Postman comes with Chai JS library embedded in. So you can use this to validate your responses and make sure that you have everything. Make sure that you can also assert on the responses and the requests. So here you can see for this, I'm just here, it's just a get request. I'm gonna get a send, and you see that's the after the send, there's a test results. All you see here, the pass. These are from the tests that have run after the API tests have been executed. So here you would see that we are using pm.response to get the response after the API is executed, and we are seeing so we are just taking a bunch of stuff uh, from the response to be validated. There are different types of validation you can do. These are these are some basic validations, like you can just set this is an these are my samples I'm showing you guys. These are just samples where you're just validating the status. Pm.response to have status. These are all chai assertions we are adding here. And these to have body, we can even make more complicated assertions like validating a JSON schema. Like we can determine the schema here and just make sure that and we can validate it using these lines. Uh, we I can provide more documentation on how to use chai schema, but it's pretty much straightforward once you get to learn how to use expectations and asserts here. So yeah, you can, that's how, the tests are very rigid. You can make very strong assertions. You can make all type of you can even test response times as well. So Postman itself is an end-to-end tool where you can make all type of API assertions for a REST API that is included. So we have gone through precondition and test monitors. So that's how now we have bundled together how to use how to set up a bunch of excuse me, how to set up a bunch of calls together and use environment variables, and also use pre-request script and tests. And the next step we are going to see is monitors. So monitors are nothing but you can you want to run the test in a particular interval of time without manual intervention. In that case, the monitor comes in handy. So you can just name test here, and I'm just going to include my collection. You can select your collection you want, and you can select the environment. In case you are using multiple environments, you want to point it to an environment where it's going to pull the URLs from. And I can set weekly, monthly, or how the interval in which you want to run your test. And also it's handy with, it can also give you email notifications to an individual email or a group. And that comes in with, excuse me, that comes in very much handy when you're trying to run a bunch of a lot of automation tests. The next step would be, that's about monitors and mocks. So mocks are something like when you want to test an API. So when you want to regression test, like you want to test against a static response, that's when mock servers comes in handy. So consider a thing like you are running an API endpoint and you want to regression test the next time. You don't want to assert all the responses. You just want to make sure that your response you have in the hand right now matches your previous response. Like yesterday's response even after the deployment. So it matches the response before the new code was deployed. So in that case, the mock servers comes in very handy. So all I have to do is send a request and add an example. So what it does is it has added an example. You just send a request and click that add example. It will add an example here. Once you have an example ready, you just have to go to the mock servers, and you can create a new one, or I have already created a new one, and it would give you the URL needed for it. Since there is already a mock server running, it's just a matter of clicking the +1 and creating a new mock server and selecting the collection you want. I'm going to skip that part, and I'm going to straightly go to collecting the mock server's URL and going to our collection. And I'm just going to copy paste this URL with your mock server URL and click send. It's going to give us, looks like something has changed and it's going to fail at this point. If you go to our mock servers and click dev and click refresh, you would see all the mock servers call that has happened with regard to the with against this server that has been deployed. So this helps in large scale testing of regression testing of large scale applications by not having much by not having individually asserting every time you make a code deployment or changes to it. The most important part of since there are as you grow your API testing within your team, you can always add your calls to your collection and keep the collection maintained. And the next step you would want to do here is how do you run this in a CI/CD pipeline? So the whole point of trying to get an API automation tests running is to get it running in a pipeline so that you don't need any manual intervention. So currently, I'm going to just show you how to run in the terminal, and you can reuse that to run within any CI/CD environment you want to. So if you have if you have set up your collection and your collection is already independent, like it uses pre-request script and tests to validate everything, and you don't have to manually enter anything anymore, that's when your collection is ready for an CI/CD pipeline. So one way to test that is you just have to click run, and your collection should run without any intervention and produce you results here. And now this collection is ready for automation without any manual intervention. You just have to uh, export the collection, uh, and it would save as a JSON, and then you can go to your terminal, and you need two things in order to run a Postman collection JSON. You need Node to be installed within your CI/CD runner. Also, you would need Newman as a global package that is offered by uh, Postman to be globally installed as a Node package. So here, all I'm going to do is, so I have already exported the JSON to my work folder, and then all I have to do is Newman run collection. That's it. You'll get a nice summary of the collection that I've run uh, from the Postman. So you can see that the test scripts, number of tests failed, assertions that have failed, and all the information here. You can also, you would think that, exporting and manually pointing the job to this file might not be applicable all the time. So that's where the workspace come into handy. So if you have a common workspace within the team, you can always use this share link and copy link, and and the Newman, the plugin that is used to run the Postman collection, has an it can directly reference it from the HTTP link that we have created to run. So you don't have to manually export. You just have to keep maintaining your collection in a workspace in a runnable format. So the CI/CD pipelines can automatically pull it and run it after every deployment or however you seem fit to it. That's pretty much, we have come to the conclusion. And so Postman as a tool, there are different ways to automate API tests nowadays, and Postman is one of the most powerful tools. And why do we want to use and when do you think Postman would be a best tool for you, for the team? Is when you're getting started with API testing. So you have a bunch of APIs that is to be tested, and you want to quickly set up some API testing. You can use Postman at this point to run an automation testing, because it's pretty convenient to set up the test. Once you have one test set up, if you want to create, consider this developer use as a test one, and you want to do a test two, you just copy, you can just copy it. Where is that?
You can duplicate.
Yep. So yeah, you can just duplicate, and you can add your requests here. So you can quickly make changes. So in that case, it accelerates, since it's pretty it does not require much of coding here. You just copy paste it, and you can change your variables for the next test case. You just have to name it in an appropriate way for each for each test scenario you are trying to reproduce. So that in that case, it accelerates a lot of your testing time, and you can jump straight into CI/CD, and it can immediately start running your tests in CI/CD. And one other major positives are it's very user friendly. It is completely UI driven, and Postman does everything for you. Even if you are not up to mark in your JavaScript, you can just use the basic Postman to do all the programming skills needed for you guys. And also the most important part of this is, how there are some limitations with when it comes to Postman. So as we move towards continuous integration and deployment, Postman is not integratable with all types of CI/CDs. So you might have to be pretty cautious uh, on what your project requires before you jump into Postman is the way to go. Postman might be a very easy, it might be help you jumpstart your API testing very easily, but in the long run, you have to, as your test suite grows and you're running around 300 to 400 test cases, your collection might get complicated, and that's when you might want to think about other ways to automate your API. But Postman still remains and one of the easiest and friendliest way to just kickstart your API testing wherever you want to. Yeah, that's all I had for you today, guys, and I'm open for questions if you have any.
Yeah, just comment. So great presentation. I have a question. Can you go back to Postman, just expand a little bit more, like on the pre-request, script tag, and test? So is it just like the pre-request script is sort of self-explanatory? It runs whatever you define there before you hit the endpoint. Test, they're sort of used to set up and consume the response, right? As well as doing test. Could you run like a little bit of the use cases, like where you can do more of the functionality for the testing tab?
Sure. So let me take this testing tab. So here we have, think about this request. We have got the response here, and a couple of things you could do here from this response here. So in order for your next tests to work, you might require values from this response to be accessible for the next test. So I'm just one thing a test can do is it can parse the response and you can set that variable to the collection variables or any variable type you want. So the next request can just pull it from the variable you have set. So that's one advantage of having a test. Parse the response, see what value we need, and save it to your environment or collection variables. So the other test, you don't have to manually go plug into the next test. So it automatically, the next test is going to pull it in for you. So that's one advantage of test. The next one is the different types of validations you can perform on the test. So you can perform schema validations, you can perform expected validations, you can perform time. I can show you more here. You can test the headers. You can perform header validations. You can even test the cookies here. So you have access to everything from the response, just from an API. So you can do all kind of testing for your endpoint with this. Also, you can also do this dynamically if you have your, you don't have to. So in most of the cases, right? So if you think about this test case here, the request body is made of dynamic data that is generated from the pre-request script. So the test also can do something like, you can just pull the data from the variable and make sure that the data that has went in is the same that has come out from the response as well. So in that case, these are going to be very, very helpful. Then one other thing that it can do is, oh, where did it go? Yeah. So when you're going through a bunch of requests and you don't always have to have them sequentially, you can use something called as a postman.set next request. This is something you can use within the test to let that test know that don't call the next API that is documented here sequentially. Call the API that I'm telling you, that I'm giving you the variables for. So in this case, it's going to come here It's going to run the test, go to the test, run all the tests, and then it's going to jump back to the chai because the next request is set to chai. But you should have some validating statement saying that, until this is done, you point it to the next test, so that's how it can also be used dynamically to say what the next request should be, rather than just manually sequentially arranging each of your API requests here. So that's another advantage of tests.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Any other questions, guys? Thanks, Naveen. Great presentation. Postman is super powerful. So it was really good.